Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. I welcome everyone, citizens, members of the media, all who are tuned in, social media and otherwise, to this Sunday morning press conference. I say welcome on behalf of the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bisesa, Senior Counsel, and my parliamentary colleagues. It is, of course, our duty, and we insist on ensuring that we uphold and fulfill our duties in making sure that we bring the contemporary issues, facts, and matters to your attention, and to tell you what our views are in terms of the good governance of what is expected of the government, to tell you the issues that surround where they are failing, to tell you where we have critical issues impacting on our very way of life. It is in this vein that Mrs. Prasad-Bisesa has mandated a panel this morning to bring these issues to the forefront and to bring it to your attention, and of course to represent your constitutional rights and to assist you wherever we can. It is my pleasure to introduce this morning, as part of the panel, my parliamentary colleague, Member of Parliament for Naparima, MP Rodney Charles, who is on my immediate left. On his left, my brother and colleague, fellow attorney at law, Mr. Kiel Taklalsingh, and of course on his left, and that is to my extreme left, we have social activist Mr. Victor Roberts. He is no stranger, of course, to the population. He is someone who champions the cause of the people. He is the one many times is championing what people they're saying on the ground, and I know Victor is someone who brings it to the forefront. And what we will do today is that we will attempt, in as concise a manner as possible, deal with the issues and bring it to the forefront. I want to say that in starting off this morning, that we have seen some, it is not unknown to see Dr. Rowley, Prime Minister, behaving in a manner which is incoherent, behaving in a manner which is not becoming of a Prime Minister, behaving in a manner and associating with members of his cabinet in a way which condescends upon the rule of law, in a manner which infringes on what we expect for the rule of law, in a manner which causes a diminution in the confidence that people ought to place in the administration of justice and the rule of law and what rights they should enjoy under the Constitution. Recently, I would have had a letter published in the newspapers, and for those who may not be appreciative of how it works, you can, as a member of parliament, as any person, you can issue what is called a press release. You can call a media conference, as we are doing here this morning. Sometimes, depending on the nature of the matter, we may choose, and on this particular occasion, I, as the member of parliament for Chaguanas West, would have chosen to submit my comments as a letter to the editor. Whatever style, whatever choice of words we use, that is a matter for us. And so, having submitted a letter to the editor earlier this week, two newspapers, the Guardian newspaper and the Express newspaper, chose to publish, and I am gracious to them for having done so, chose to publish my letter to the editor yesterday, Saturday. So, I want to deal with that matter first because Dr. Rowley has come out with a response, and it is a response which I have to say I did, preliminarily view it as bizarre, and it seems as though Dr. Rowley was unhinged in terms of his statement which he put out in his official Facebook page. So my response is really response to Prime Minister Rowley's tantrum. And this, of course, is against a backdrop. When we hear all of the speakers this morning, our presser today is really the PNM's assault on our constitutional rights. So I want to deal with Prime Minister Rowley's tantrum first of all. My letter to the editor, published in both The Guardian and Express newspapers on Saturday yesterday, might not have risen to the level of Jonathan Swift, some know him as Dean Swift, or the mighty spoiler for satire, but apparently it was too high for the Honorable Prime Minister. Like the bad sport he has proven himself to be time and again, the Prime Minister tries to cut through the amusing thought of my take on the situation of a police commissioner grading himself B+ for his performance, to drop a humorless hammer on it. In passing, I mentioned the Prime Minister admitted to breaking the law and intercepting the Police Service Commission's merit list at the President's house earlier this year. No, replied the Prime Minister on his official Facebook page. And it was and I quote, a mischievous falsehood. It started out as speculation and only their interpretation. It is now published by him as a quotation statement of fact. I have said no such thing. That was Rowley's response. He then goes on to say he merely passed on some relevant information to the chairman of the Police Service Commission. He never saw the merit list, nor was it ever shown to nor discussed with him. And he said, and I quote again, he has not been a party to the withdrawal of any merit list. I want to know which country Dr. Rowley really living in. I know he flies a lot, MP Charles, and he's more out of the country than in, but still. But this is not what has been out in the public domain for months. I want to go on a serious note. So I want to stick a pin at this point and to delve a bit into the facts surrounding this matter. You see, in September 2021, and this was going on even before, but I'm going back to September 2021, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, Senior Counsel, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, called for the resignation of the entire Police Service Commission owing to no merit list reaching the Parliament. And in this regard, I reference the Express newspapers of 22nd September 2021. The inevitable fact, the inevitable state of affairs, the inescapable conclusion, which is the reality facing Trinidad and Tobago, is that we have been for well over a year without a substantive commissioner of police. The inevitable and inescapable reality in this country, Dr. Rowley, is that because of your doing, we have a situation where we witness the total collapse of the Police Service Commission. So I want a reference from September 2021, even though facts and matters, the factual matrix would have started even before then. You will recall the publication of one of the Police Service Commissioner's email to the chair of the Police Service Commission, one of the commissioners emailing Bliss C. Prasad, the chair of the Police Service Commission, expressing serious reservations about the manner of withdrawing the merit list, and even suggesting that the merit list be submitted as is. And I quote, let those, this is one of the commissioner's words, let those who object do so in the appropriate forum, as was done before, close quote. Again, I say see Express of 22nd September 2021. Then came calls for all of the Police Service Commission members to resign. Mrs. Prasad Bisesa called upon the President, Ms. Paula May Weeks, to explain why the merit list was not given to the Parliament. I want to reference Guardian article September 23, 2021. On the 24th of September 2021, the Express, Senator Wade Mark, it is carrying the headline, Senator Wade Mark asked who was the public official who met with the chairman of the Police Service Commission, Ms. Bliss C. Prasad. Members of the Police Service Commission resigned one after the next, with the chair finally resigning as reported by the Express on 1st October 2021. Total collapse of the Police Service Commission based on the calls of members of the opposition public pressure from the public, members of the public. The Express of the 1st of October 2021 also carried an article titled, and I quote, this was a commentary from Senior Counsel Martin Daly. The title was Daly, Unmask That Unnamed Official. Unmask That Unnamed Official. In that article, it quoted Martin Daly, Senior Counsel, as saying that, and I quote Mr. Daly's words, he or she must be unmasked and his or her identity revealed to us, close quote, in relation to the unnamed official which interfered with the performance of Chair Bliss Sipasad. In Sunday Express of 3rd October 2021, the Express editorial titled, Red Flag, Not Red Herring, and I want to adopt this headline this morning as well. Don't be fooled by Dr. Rowley's red herrings. That is what we have to keep focused on. Don't be fooled by the Prime Minister's red herrings. What the Express editorial said then was that, and I quote, was that despite the Prime Minister's attempt to dismiss public concern as mere rah-rah, the events that led to the collapse of the Police Service Commission are far from minor. So, you know, Dr. Rowley have a way you come out and you can say boo-ha-ha, and you can say there's a set of rah-rah, and them making mischief and whatever else. The Express editorial called him out. We are on not red herrings. We are on red flag at this point in time. In the editorial, it cited that at the news conference held the day before, then Attorney General Al-Rawi quite disingenuously challenged a journalist who referred to the reported interference that had succeeded in blocking the attempt by the Police Service Commission's then chairman, Bliss Sipasad, to deliver to the President a merit list of candidates for the Commissioner of Police position. So then AG Al-Rawi was basically taking a reporter to task for asking questions on these matters. The editorial of the Express went further to cite that opposition leader Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar had challenged Prime Minister Rowley to say whether it was him. This is since October last year, 2021. In response, I'm going back to the editorial, in response, Dr. Rowley had so far opted for silence, as indeed has President Paula May Weeks. So there's a saying in this country in common parlance, you know, pulling teeth, right? So look at the conduct here. But listen to what the editorial went on to say, and I want to quote this for you all. This is no ordinary case of interference to be wished away by picong and old talk. The issue cuts to the heart of the constitutional processes as laid down by law for governing the country. The possibility that constitutional procedures designed to protect the independence of the office of the President may have been subverted and hijacked by forces unknown and still hidden is terrifying and describes a crisis inside the heart of our democracy. This is the editorial a day after Al-Rawi is, trying to berate a reporter for asking certain questions on what happened with the merit list. Who was the official? After Martin Daly, Senior Counsel, is asking that person must be unmasked. After Wade Mark asked who was the person who went to the President's house. After Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar, championing this cause, wanting full accountability. This is what the editorial goes on to say. The fact that Dr. Rowley seems unconcerned about this is deeply disturbing and may even be perceived as revealing. So an editorial is making a statement about the Prime Minister of the country, about Dr. Rowley. They're saying the fact that he seems unconcerned about this is deeply disturbing and may even be perceived as revealing. The dust must not be allowed to settle on this until the full details on what went on at President's house on August 12th are disclosed. And I close the quotation from that editorial. In an article which appeared side by side with this said editorial was an article by Martin Daly, Senior Counsel, titled, and I quote, Destroying Trust and Confidence. Martin Daly, Senior Counsel, said inter alia, and I am quoting him now, it is alleged that subsequent to August 12th, the chair had received documents, and this is referring to the chair of the Police Service Commission, Ms. Blissy Prasad, had received documents but was reluctant at first to share the documents with her fellow members, commissioners, or to name the source of the information provided. The chair, Ms. Blissy Prasad, subsequently did provide the documents, but her colleagues did not find the documents compelling and wished to proceed by seeking further information about allegations being made about the issue of firearm users licenses reflecting on outgoing Commissioner Griffith's stewardship. It is further reported that the chair acted unilaterally. This is all in Martin Daly, Senior Counsel's commentary. It is further reported that the chair acted unilaterally in appointing a third party to examine the allegations and in issuing a letter dated 17 September 2021 requiring Griffith not to report for duty until further notice. And I want to emphasize what Mr. Daly says. The essence of what has happened is that an approach was made to the chair at President's House. She took on what was said and diverted from the course of action on which the Police Service Commission had agreed. She then took further action pursuant to the approach, including the cease to report direction to Griffith, and did so without the knowledge and agreement of the other members of the Police Service Commission. Close quotation. Martin Daly, of course, goes on with his commentary. He recalled that he himself had the week before publicly questioned who is the unnamed official who approached the chair of the Police Service Commission and probably made the chair, Blissy Prasad, feel intimidated. Mr. Daly said he or she must be unmasked to use the famous test of a British lawyer, even a moron in a hurry. This is the British lawyer being quoted by Martin Daly in his commentary. Even a moron in a hurry will understand the perception of covert or shady dealings that has been created. That is all of Martin Daly's commentary. Subsequent commentary from NJAC, Mr. Israel Khan, Senior Counsel, spoke about the entire affair as a constitutional mess. You will recall the opposition led by Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar calling upon the President Paula May Weeks to break her silence and account, insisting that we have accountability in the public's interest as to what exactly took place with the merit list. Dr. Rowley and then Attorney General Arawi dismissed our calls, all of our calls, and casting it simply as making mischief. When the pressure of the public, remember I started this factual matrix deliberately at September 2021. When the pressure of the public and the opposition built up, we had a Prime Minister coming for the first time, I have to say, in March 2015, to state that it was him that went to President's House and engaging in a process contrary to law, the independence of the Police Service Commission under the Constitution, and the public's interest. So I want to show you all, after all of that, we are talking about months of commentary, months of questions being asked, asking it in the Parliament, asking questions out in the public domain, reporters asking questions. And then you have here now on the 14th of March, this was the Daily Express, and this is what it says. So I now refer to the Express front page of Monday, 14th March 2022, titled Griffith Top Cup Fiasco. Prime Minister admits he was high-ranking official who met Police Service Commission chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, big and bold on this page, with the words next to Prime Minister Dr. Rowley, it was me. I know MP Charles will say proper grammar is it was I. But the article, it was me, SIC. Alright? So this is a story, and it says a C story of Ria Tate on page 3. So I leave it to everyone. I know the population is aware of these facts. I know Dr. Rowley himself ought to be aware of the facts, but conveniently trying to create red herrings. I want to now go to, and I don't know if our technical people will be able to pull up a video of an interview with Mr. Kamal George's interviewing Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, Prime Minister. And this is something that, if we can show that now, that video clip.
contaminate what information from the information that I presume that they did the job. Earlier this year, you said you had no involvement. There was a conversation that someone intercepted the chairman of the police commission, so that was not you. The one with your cabinet intercepted. I did not see that. Because I am very careful about the diagnosis and the way that they say, I say what I should say. It means that the Police Service Commission took instructions from and changed this and sent back this and so. I hear people talking about this on what's going on Americans. I have seen this. This has spoken to me about Americans. I have given you instructions and whatever applications. But I would say very clearly that the information in my possession, in my capacity as chairman of the National Security Committee, was pertinent information which should have been available to the Police Service Commission, and I didn't make that information available. And it was part of the complaint that the police education that I did what I consider to be pertinent information. And when before that, I said as Prime Minister, any information ever could.
So I am appreciative. Some members through, of course, social media stream has indicated that the audio is a little bit muffled. So we will attempt to show it back a second time. But what you are seeing there, ladies and gentlemen, is Dr. Rowley being interviewed by Mr. Kamal Georges. And Mr. Kamal Georges is clearly telling him that there was a conversation where Dr. Rowley intercepted the merit list. And Dr. Rowley, you had denied that. We will show back the clip. Dr. Rowley, you denied that having been done. And he responds, Dr. Rowley responds to Kamal Georges, I never said such thing. So he was trying to change his game after all these months of saying nothing, and then coming to say it was me, and of course trying to deflect the attention as though he did nothing wrong. I want to tell Dr. Rowley something. We're just waiting to show back that clip, but I want to tell Dr. Rowley something. If you are having an improper conversation with Chairman Bliss Prasad of the Police Service Commission, you are having that improper conversation, you are having it in a manner which is not part of a protocol or convention understood under the Constitution. You are having it in a manner which is questionable as a matter of law. You are having this conversation with an entity which ought to be insulated from you. The Police Service Commission is supposed to be insulated under the Constitution from you as the Prime Minister, and you are having that conversation. I want to say that that is admission of actionable wrongdoing on your part. I have Taklalsingh here, my lawyer, and I have plenty court clothes, more than you. I challenge you, if you think I am saying anything contrary to the public's interest, you take me to court for saying that that is what you did. You admitted of actionable wrongdoing in that interview. And all of there are several other articles. The Guardian carried articles around March of 2022. Newsday carried articles. I just chose to use this article from the Express as they were trailing it, and Ms. Ria Tate carried a story. And there are quotes in these articles where they were quoting what Dr. Rowley said in relation to his responses to questions asked by the media. Let's show back that Kamal Georges video, and I hope, ladies and gentlemen, you are able to see it.
Contact with or information from the commission, but I presume that they did their job. Earlier this year, you said you had no involvement. There was a conversation that someone intercepted the chairman of the Police Service Commission. You said that was not you. But did any member of your cabinet intercept? I did not see that because I was very careful about words I use and what anybody say I say what I didn't say. It was really said that the Police Service Commission took instructions from and changed and said not this information.
So what we propose to do based on the feedback,
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I think that the audio is not that good. We will take the video in isolation and we will have that posted today, right? As soon as the presser, even during the presser, we'll try to get it up on our pages. But what we are seeing here, we would like to proceed. What we are seeing here is that after months of questioning by members of the opposition and the public, finally, Dr. Rowley saw it fit to clear the air in March of 2022. One must ask the question why it took Dr. Rowley this length of time to say affirmatively that it was him who went to President's house. If, according to Dr. Rowley, he was only exchanging information, why did he not come out at the beginning of the entire affair and own up to his actions? Only after a desperate attempt to bob and weave does Dr. Rowley tire and admit to meeting the chair, Bliss C. Prasad, after many months. So I want to unstick the pin I had stuck earlier when I got into this factual matrix. So I want to repeat that the front page of the Express on March 14, 2022 ran a headline that it was me, below a strap headline stating Prime Minister admits he was the high-ranking official who met with the chairman of the Police Service Commission.
He didn't challenge it.
Right? Didn't challenge this, you know. He didn't challenge this. The page 3 story by Ria Tate then, by direct quotation, has the Prime Minister saying it was him who met with the President and the head of the Police Service Commission on the day the merit list was delivered to the President by the Chair Bliss C. Prasad of the Police Service Commission. He presented Chair Bliss C. Prasad with information but had no discussion about the merit list. This is what Ria Tate is putting in his story. This caused the President to return the list to the head of the Police Service Commission, who then created a new list which gave us our B grade, our grade B commissioner. However you wish to state it, the Prime Minister caused the lawful list to be diverted or discarded. Only, I want to make this abundantly clear, you know, only an illiterate, mentally ill, or dishonest person would say otherwise. But rather than the substance of the message, let us focus on the form. The very way this conflict is being structured suggests that its only purpose is conflict for its own sake, as distraction from more important issues. This is one of those semantic merry-go-rounds which invite us to interpret ambiguous facts endlessly, which usually, like all merry-go-rounds, lead us in circles. And this isn't an isolated event or utterance. It also appears that with this, the Prime Minister is reshaping facts and reality at his will. This is not the first time he has done this. In fact, his most infamous episode was the laying of what was subsequently proven to be false, manufactured emails in the Parliament. More recently, a few months ago, the Express on 4th of May, page 3, ran a story detailing the Prime Minister's reprimand of journalist Darren Baho for stating in a previous report, Baho had written that he, Rowley, and I quote, had appeared in court in the Landate matter. In fact, the journalist had not written that. The statement was that the Prime Minister made his first court showing. But this is what Dr. Rowley remembered and nurtured for years. And add this to other things the Prime Minister said, which have proven, ladies and gentlemen, to not be true. Like we are not closing Petrotrin. And you will see that a pattern emerges on an individual level. It appears that the Prime Minister cannot distinguish between what he wishes to be true and the actual facts. This might be indicative of a medical issue. On an institutional level, this attitude appears to have infected his party communication apparatus, which uses highly paid online social media trolls to peddle disinformation. But more importantly, it has affected the government information apparatus and the media, who often transmit government opinion as fact. As a political strategy, this resembles the 45th President of the United States tactics. He was famous for belligerent, false and outrageous statements via press and social media, leaving his opponents scrambling to compile the necessary facts to refute. But by the time this happened, the president had moved on, leaving chaos and distortion in his wake. What does this all point to, ladies and gentlemen? My political leader, the Honorable Mrs. Kamala Prasad Visesa, Senior Counsel, recently mentioned George Orwell's novel 1984. It is the tale of a dystopian state with a brutal regime which ruled by misery, fear and hatred as a means of control. In that book, one of the strategies the regime undertook to control information was the rewriting of history. When the regime's needs changed, history was rewritten, facts, books and newspapers changed, and archives altered. I don't need to tell you the consequences of that. But there's another important work our Prime Minister's actions remind me of, an essay written by the American political scientist Richard Hofstadter in 1964. It is called The Paranoid Style in American Politics. I will quote a bit from this essay, and I want to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to replace the word American with Trinidadian. And this is how the quote begins. American politics has often been an arena for angry minds. In recent years, we have seen angry minds at work who have demonstrated how much political leverage can be got out of the animosities and passions of a small minority. I call it the paranoid style, end quote. The style has several characteristics Trinidadians might recognize. It begins with notions of conspiracy. It involves an out-group on whom all the ills are blamed. And third, the enemy is usually a threat to the nation's life and is totally evil. So let me, in conclusion, attempt to simplify this further. PNM politics under Rowley is based on just these things. A fear for the opposition, which is consistently painted as evil and inimical to the aims of the state. The belief that the opposition's denizens are constantly engaged in conspiracies to defraud the state or the rightful owners of Trinidad. And again, we will get to the necessity of the phenomena like the Nelson Gate indemnity. And finally, that those in power are really the persecuted. Its consequences for you and me are chaos, conflict, and often violence. This is a small glimpse into this subject, of course, but what I want to leave you with is that these outbursts from Prime Minister Rowley, which seem to treat facts as plasticine, are systematic. They are either symptoms of some malaise or part of a communication strategy. Whatever the reason, ladies and gentlemen, they are dangerous to national institutions. The truth cannot change with feelings or whether any one person would prefer it to be something else. And I want to leave you with that. Dr. Rowley is creating distractions. I want to say that he is attempting, and this Rowley-led government is attempting to create distractions from contemporary issues which are affecting the fundamental constitutional rights of you and me, of our citizenry. And this is where we are going in the direction to bring alive those matters which this government does not want you to know about. We have here this morning Mr. Victor Roberts, as I said, social activist, somebody who has been championing a lot of the cause of the people, being very vocal against the government, and that is his freedom of speech. I want to ask him to tell us recently what has happened in relation to him exercising, and not only him, a whole grouping, hundreds, maybe thousands of persons of Trinidad and Tobago citizens who were denied their constitutional rights. Victor?
Honorable political leader, members of the media, Trinidad and Tobago, good morning, all protocols observed. What I want to share with you this morning, ladies and gentlemen, it is a sequence of correlated attack on our democratic rights and the democracy of Trinidad and Tobago. We have seen, ladies and gentlemen, because of the Rowley-led government, the contamination with the independent arms of state in this country, I must conclude this morning that what we have sitting on the chair as Prime Minister is nothing but a reincarnated Papa Doc of Haiti. Ladies and gentlemen, we have seen from where I sit as an activist in this country, where people have stood up to bring to the forefront the ills and the issue. As a result of the contamination, we have seen tear gas used on law-abiding citizens who intend to raise the ills of society. And this doesn't stop there. We have recently applied to the Commissioner of Police, what I consider to be the PNM appointed Commissioner of Police. We have applied according to section 1102. We have applied, ladies and gentlemen, to the commissioner to have permission fulfilling all the requirements, every bit of requirements. A matter of fact, since on the 2nd at the 12th, when we actually send that letter 8 days prior to the march. What we have experienced, ladies and gentlemen, is that the process by the police they continue to stall the process on a daily basis. Want me to bring this, want me to bring that. And as soon as I carry a piece of document that they request, they will then come back the night after and say, Mr. Roberts, we want to have the original of these documents. Not to say that they didn't know what they wanted before. But the point I am making, ladies and gentlemen, is that despite all that was done according to law, to the end of the day, on the last hour, at 4:45 on Friday afternoon, I received a call from the chief clerk telling us that our permission has since been denied. And this is where we are in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, as a result of the behavior, I have instructed my team of lawyers, one who you will hear from very shortly, to take the necessary action against the state for the infringement of our democratic right in this society. We must stand up as a people in this country. We must stand up and defend our constitution. We have seen so much breaches, as MP Rambally state. We have seen breaches where independent institutions get involved with the political directorate, collapsing the whole of the Police Service Commission. We have seen, as a result of breaches, we now have before us the Nelson Gate fiasco. We have seen, ladies and gentlemen, because of these breaches by those who ought to hold the Constitution as sacred as possible, we are seeing that the whole Constitution has been trampled upon by this Papa Doc regime. And we are saying, I am saying as an activist of this country, that I am going to stand in the defense of our Constitution, and I am going to stand in defense of our democratic right and ensure that all process is adhered to by those in authority. It matters not whether it's the commissioner, whether or not it's Papa Doc, whether or not whoever it may be. We have to stand together as a people in this country, put aside differences, put aside ethnic background, put aside religion, and stand in the defense of our democracy. And we must not allow any arm of state to conspire with the political directorate to erode our democracy. I am saying today, ladies and gentlemen, that, as I said before, we will take the necessary action to do what is of utmost importance to ensure that democracy stands, and it stands tall in our country, where our children, our grandchildren, and the unborn babies will have that right, where our forefathers, our ancestors stood out, and ensure that we have a democracy that we can truly appreciate. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Mr. Victor Roberts. As I indicated in introducing him, he has been championing the cause of the people on the ground, and you can hear the passion in his speech, in his voice, in his tone, and his demeanor is one of being lawful with respect to how he goes about doing his things. I want to quickly move along to Mr. Kiel Taklalsingh, attorney at law, someone who does not need any introduction in the public domain. He has been championing a lot of the public law cases, a lot of the constitutional rights cases. He has been taking the matters before the first instance judges, taking it to the Court of Appeal, and he has matters which have gone to the Privy Council and several matters presently pending before the Privy Council. And it is because he believes in the rule of law. He believes in ensuring that people enjoy their full fundamental rights under the Constitution. And without further ado, I want to ask my colleague, Mr. Kiel Taklalsingh, of course, to take the floor.
Thank you to my brother MP Rambally, my brother and leader-in-law. He's always modest, but I think just by the way he dealt with the facts this morning, he has forensically taken apart that statement by Dr. Rowley, the Prime Minister, yesterday, to senior MP Rodney Charles, a man who I look up to for guidance on many occasions, to you, the viewers, to the leader, Ms. Kamala Prasad-Bisesa. Thank you again, Senior Counsel. Thank you again for having me and to allowing me the opportunity to raise these issues. The UNC, in my view, is the only rule of law party in this country. It is the only political entity that respects the rule of law. It is the party that gave us the Judicial Review Act. It is the party that gave us the Freedom of Information Act. It is the party that gave us the Equal Opportunities Act. It is the party that upholds the rights of citizens in this country. My task is a very short and simple one today. As my brother Victor Roberts told you, he has been denied a permit to march. He will be initiating legal action. We have already started the process with pre-action protocol, and by next week we will be filing a claim in court. We'll be filing a claim to challenge the decision to deny him the permit. We will be suing the police office holders, the commissioner of police, and individual police officers. All of those police officers who got themselves into this web of deception, all of those police officers who machinated and deceived and connived to deny Victor Roberts his constitutional rights, you will not be spared in this lawsuit. We will also be approaching and suing the Attorney General of this country. Will be suing the state because we want to strike down that law. We are of the respectful view that any law which requires permission from the person you want to protest against, because that is what Mr. Roberts was doing. He was going to protest against dictatorship, against incompetence, and against the rising and unbridled crime rate in this country. So how could a law say that in order to protest against your oppressors, to protest against those who are taking away your democratic rights, those persons must also be the ones to give you permission to protest? That cannot be right in our country. That cannot be right in a sovereign democratic state. And I say that cannot be right in accordance with our constitution. And you see, the issue is a very simple one. The law requires that you seek a permit to march. The intention of that law was a noble one. It was simply to give the police notice for them to assign the appropriate manpower and resources to facilitate your constitutional rights. That is what the law's intention was. But it is clear that what has happened in this country, particularly in the last 7 years, is the police have used that law, that notification law, to disrupt and stifle dissent in this country, which cannot be right. And if you wish to pervert the law, then we will invoke the Constitution and have that law struck down or modified. It simply cannot be right. I also want to say that it is perhaps, I suppose, serendipity that on December 10th, International Human Rights Day, the day that I know Victor Roberts chose specifically for that march, that the police the day before would deny him his fundamental human rights. And it will be a day in the infamy. It will be a day to go down in the infamy of the dictatorship in this country, because it is a day we will launch a counter-strike. It is a day we will launch a legal counter-strike against such oppressive laws in this country. And we will seek to ensure that this will never take place again. I also have a message for the police in this country. I want to say to the police that each and every police officer in this country should be ashamed and angry about what happened to Victor Roberts on Friday. It is not all of you, I know that. But quite frankly, I'm getting fed up of saying that it only have a few bad apples in the police service. Because if you are complicit, then you are allowing it. So I will not say that today. I want to call on each and every police officer to ensure that when Mr. Roberts approaches you again for permission to march, that each officer does what he has to do, uphold the law, uphold the rule of law, and ensure that he gets his permission. Because you see, your job as police officers is to protect and serve. Your job is to protect and serve. Your job is to uphold the law. It is not only to uphold speeding laws and tint laws and no entry laws. In this country, we have a supreme law, and that law is the Constitution. And under the Constitution, we have a freedom of expression, and we have a freedom of assembly, and we have a freedom to associate with political parties. And it is your duty to uphold not only minor laws, it is your duty to uphold the supreme law. So when a citizen approaches the police service for a permit to march, it is your job to act with alacrity to ensure that that is done, and to ensure that he receives his permit, and to ensure that he and his fellow citizens are protected while they exercise their constitutional rights. That is the purpose of the law. The purpose of the law is not for you to throw up roadblocks and obstacles in his way to get permit to march because you have whatever taskmasters telling you that they don't want any march in this country. That is not right. And we will approach the courts and we will do what we have to do to ensure that our democratic rights are protected in this country. Dinesh spoke about 1984 by George Orwell. I want to commend to the population another book by Aldous Huxley, A Brave New World. Read that book and it will tell you where the population will go when you become dehumanized, when you become robotic as a result of deprivation of human rights. That is where we will end up if our freedom of expression and association is taken away. We have to understand that the earliest societies in mankind were formed because individuals were expressing association and expression. That is why that right is so core. That is why it is so core to humanity. And if you take it away, you are essentially taking away our humanity and our society. So we will not allow you to do it. I call upon the police service, ensure that Mr. Roberts' application is processed, because he intends, as I understand it, to have a march on Black Friday in January. It will be called the Black Friday March, and it will be a march to take back our democracy in this country. As a lawyer, as a citizen, I have always believed it is my duty, both as a lawyer and a citizen, to ensure that democratic rights are upheld and that oppression is fought at every turn. And I give my commitment to my client now, Mr. Victor Roberts, but in any event, my brother and good friend Victor Roberts, that I will do all that I can to ensure that his march is successful come Black Friday in January. Thank you very much, and thank you, Dinesh.
I want to thank Mr. Kiel Taklalsingh for his contribution this morning. We subscribe to something called the Rule of Law Index, and all the democratic countries subscribe to this index. And when you listen to Mr. Kiel Taklalsingh and you listen to Mr. Victor Roberts, it is no surprise that we have dropped in the rankings in terms of the Rule of Law Index. And what that suggests is that the very things that Mr. Taklalsingh and Mr. Roberts are speaking about, there is no adherence, or there is a lack of adherence to the rule of law by those in governance, this Rowley-led PNM. So I want to thank Kiel, and of course we look forward to the challenge of this law. Any law that is vague or uncertain, any law that is being utilized for the purpose of creating any kind of oppression on the people, does not carry the quality and the nature of a law sufficient that it can, or justifiable that it can govern us. So I look forward to this challenge. Mr. Kiel Taklalsingh, thank you very much. I want to move quickly along to one of my political mentors, and someone who always gives a lot of support and courage to young parliamentarians, somebody who has been around for a long time, very experienced in the political sphere, I know that he supports our political leader in a very, tremendous fashion and in a manner that lends itself to the entire opposition base, the UNC's base, that we all look forward to hearing from him. I know he has been championing the cause, holding the government accountable in terms of crime and national security and other issues associated. And I would like to now hand over to MP for Naparima, Mr. Rodney Charles. He has been, as they say, giving them hell in the parliament on account of ensuring that citizens get what they deserve. Accountability, the truth, and of course, good representation, good governance. MP Charles, it is my pleasure to now welcome you on this discussion.
Thank you, my colleague MP Dinesh Rambally, and other eminent colleagues on this forum, who I consider as patriots in the battle for our democracy. Now, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, has God forsaken us? Why is every aspect of our crime fighting strategies failing? Is it that when it comes to crime in Trinidad and Tobago, we exist in a policy vacuum? Are we lacking cutting-edge crime-fighting policies? Are Hines and Rowley up to the job? The truth is that there is no strategic leadership on crime. Rowley and Hines manifest a thinking it up as they go along style of leadership. It is tactical, it is not strategic, and certainly not all of government. So with 600 murders on the horizon, we are in deep crisis, fellow citizens. And if we add in a category called missing presumed dead, we will recoil in fear at those damning statistics. So Dr. Rowley caught a VAPS months ago and decreed that crime was a public health emergency. He decreed. And we have heard little since, even after this Friday's obfuscatory mutterings in Parliament. And this week, Dr. Rowley catches another VAPS and summons us to a day of prayer. But scripture tells us that faith without works cannot save a man and neither a nation. And I implore Dr. Rowley to read the book of James, which tells us that deeds or actions are the byproducts of a living faith. You cannot beg God to solve our crime crisis and have nothing to show in the form of well-conceived crime-fighting initiatives. You cannot, as a government, Dr. Rowley, call for a day of prayer, but advocate for a mafia-style Costa Nostra code, or cabinet with a record number of recusals, or consort with community leaders and facilitating them with state contracts. Dr. Rowley, you need to beg forgiveness for the 4 divers who gave their lives to help our economy. You need to get down on your knees and pray for the students in a school who had to duck from bullets, Dr. Rowley. Dr. Rowley, you cannot consort with community leaders and give them state contracts and then beg God for forgiveness. You have to have works or a track record of performance on crime. In Genesis, we are told that by the sweat of our brows or by the works we do, we shall survive. But lazy Dr. Rowley does not know about hard work. He never had and does not now have a sensible crime plan. He has no plan. Dr. Rowley's default leadership style is management by VAPs. We therefore cannot blame the police. We cannot really blame McDonald Jacob, or Erla Harewood Christopher, or Ramnarayan Samaru, or Kurt Simon for the 600 murder rate. The blame lies squarely, my friend, the blame lies squarely with Dr. Rowley. So here we have a summary of our crime crisis under Keith Christopher Rowley. One, poor decision making by Rowley and Hines. 2, inadequate policy guidance and direction. 3, indecisive and absentee leadership. 4, and my colleague from Princeton talked about it, laziness, sheer laziness. 5, political interference in critical appointments at the highest levels in the TTPS. And my friend MP Rambally spoke eloquently in that regard. 6, no urgency in acquiring scanners to safeguard our ports. The litany goes on and on. Number 7, patrol vessels forever tied up in Stobbles Bay, either for dry docking or broken propellers or lack of fuel. 8, inability or unwillingness to integrate Venezuelan migrants into our society. And 9, a penchant for blaming others for his monumental failures. And therein, my friends, lies our predicament for out of control escalation in crime. But it will get worse. Rowley is the problem. He does not have a plan. He relies on bullying his way into our subconsciousness. He thinks in binary terms, good versus evil, imps versus friends, those to be bullied versus friends to be protected at all costs. And for him, there are no shades of grey and certainly no vision. And we all know that where there is no vision, a people perish. And because there is no vision in Dr. Rowley and Hines' crime plan, we are witnessing a murder rate heading for 600. This PNM is the root cause of our crime problem. Every crime initiative, fighting initiative taken by Rowley and Hines conduced to inaction, inefficiency, ineptitude, slothfulness, lack of in-depth analysis, laziness, and incompetence. So we have some questions. Why, despite all the evidence that he should, Rowley outrightly refuses to replace Fitzgerald Ethelbert Hines? Why would an acting commissioner of police take leave when murders for this year are heading for 600 and December is the month known for murders? Why the suddenness? Going on leave in the month of December is sheer madness, given the numbers of murders recorded annually. It is tantamount to a prime minister and a minister of finance taking leave in the month when the annual budget is read. It is madness. 49 murders were committed in December 2017. Wow. The second highest for any month in that year. In 2018, there were 34 murders in December. In 2019, 48, the 5th murderous month in that year. In 2020, 28 murders were recorded, increasing to 34 1 year later. And according to statistics, we have 12 murders for December this year. DJ Sheriff. Why would anyone approve leave for the most senior officer in the TTPS in the month of December? Why would an acting commissioner of police go on leave, especially after he correctly alerted us to the fact that most high-powered guns were entering the country through legal ports of entry? And we have to ask, is this the same acting commissioner of police who in May this year called out all vacationing police officers to help in his new crime initiative? Things are not adding up in Trinidad and Tobago. We have to ask the question, did Jacob go on leave voluntarily? Or was he sent on leave because he spoke about the scanner crisis at our ports? Why would a government, for whatever reason, be satisfied that all top officers in the TTPS are holding acting appointments? That is disgraceful. That is third world behavior. Shame. And to top it all off, the most senior officer is on contract, having already reached retirement age. What nonsense are we for real? Why after 7 years in office has this administration not streamlined the convoluted process for appointing a commissioner of police? After all, this was item number 1 in their hurriedly put together 2015 10-point crime plan. So, Dr. Rowley, blaming the UNC on this matter does not cut it after 7 years. Only Dr. Rowley and his band of misfits can see logic in that argument. So Dr. Rowley, faith without works cannot save you, even in the spiritual realm. Do the work and then seek God's help. One has to ask the question, is this administration not ashamed that top acting positions in the police service make us look like a Hollywood situation complete with best supporting actors and actress nomination? We were in Parliament, best supporting actress. The entire policy framework in which the TTPS operates speaks to incompetence, lack of vision, ineptitude, cluelessness, and ad hocism. And if this continues, we may very well have to get accustomed to 800 murders annually by the time this administration demits office. This Friday, the government hurriedly sought parliamentary approval for the nomination of Ms. Erla Harewood Christopher to act for another actor in the acting Commissioner of Police, McDonald Jacob. Now, the entire process spoke to haste and possibly incompetence. It is what we call in Trinidad a quickie job. The Police Service Commission informed Her Excellency the President on the 8th of December, the same day according to reports, Mr. Jacob proceeded on leave. The very next day, Her Excellency forwarded the nomination to the Clerk of the House, which was approved in Parliament the very same day it was received. You talk about a quickie job. Is this the modus operandi of the TTPS under the leadership of Fitzgerald Ethelberg Hines? On Friday, we dealt with the symptoms of leadership in the crisis in the TTPS. We did not deal with the cure. The cure would have been a streamlining of the process, granting unilateral powers to the Police Service Commission to make acting appointments in the topmost offices in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Now in October, Dr. Rowley gave Parliament his word that he would bring legislation to Parliament very soon to ensure that short-term acting appointments to the Commissioner of Police and 3 DCOPs would be handled exclusively by the Police Service Commission. He did so when Mrs. Erla Christopher first acted for acting COP Jacob when he was on a short-term visit to the United Kingdom. So we now once again call on Dr. Rowley to bring that legislation immediately to Parliament. That cannot be the most difficult piece of legislation to draft and to bring to Parliament. Bring it, but do not include extraneous provisions, what is known as poison pill insertions, to contaminate that bill. He will do that. Bring a straightforward bill vesting powers of making more senior acting appointments in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to the PSC, the Police Service Commission. Discuss it with us beforehand if you will condescend to so doing. And let us get this convoluted, time-wasting, inefficient process over and done with. But knowing Dr. Rowley's slothfulness, 2025 will come and pass, and Parliament will still be detained approving acting senior appointments in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So we are left with a government that operates without rhyme or reason. They live in a bubble, giving themselves A's and B pluses performance ratings. And we are always left in the dark and always have to second guess their incompetence. Are we to presume that acting Commissioner of Police McDonald Jacob was instructed to take leave at this time? Is it because he blew the whistle on the crisis with scanners? Are we left wondering whether this vacation policy is merely a ploy, a ruse to ensure that Miss Erla Harewood Christopher fails? Or is it a ploy to validate Rowley and Hines' stated view that putting someone else, in this case Mrs. Christopher, will not affect crime in general and the murder rate in particular? You see, games, we are not governed by management principles, but by games. So their plan is to officially appoint her one day after the incumbent proceeds on leave, hoping sincerely that she will not succeed. And I want to warn her that, and the senior officers in the police service, you have a duty to the Constitution and the rule of law, and do not think that you have to abide by the political directory and the policies of incompetence that make you look bad. In the absence of data and information, we are left to wonder what really is in the heads of Keith Christopher Rowley and his ever faithful acolyte, Fitzgerald Ethelbert Heights. And to add insult to injury, like a schoolmaster of yesteryear, Rowley admonishes opposition MPs to be seen and not heard. We used to be told that long ago, a child must be seen and not heard. Shut up, lest pirates on the sea know that our vessels are down for repairs and not patrolling the seas. Well, Dr. Rowley, do not shoot the messenger for the fact that your administration cannot keep operational our expensively acquired marine patrol vessels not by a proper procurement process. Everyone who passes by Stowers Bay can witness our border patrol vessels tied up in port and not patrolling our vessels. Not patrolling our borders, sorry. Everyone knows that our coastlines are exposed to infiltration by all and sundry. Pirates on the seas do not have to listen to the Parliament channel to know that our vessels are down. That information is public knowledge on Facebook elsewhere. I saw it on Facebook by Damian Lyder, Senator, and Senator Arnold Roberts. And they were showing the vessels tied up. And the Prime Minister has the effrontery to tell us that we are alerting the criminals to the fact that they cannot manage our vessels and keep them operational. Dead bodies arrive in Tobago undetected by our Coast Guard. Fishermen in Cali Bay, and if I talk to MP Ratiram, he's forever talking about that the fishermen know that they are better off with marine versions of neighborhood watch groups. So, Dr. Rowley, deal with the problem of maintenance of our vessels. Deal with the problem of paying bills on time for fuel and lubricants. Deal with the issue of management and training of Coast Guard officers. Whether it is the lack of scanners at our ports, whether it is poor maintenance of marine assets, whether it is poor leadership on the part of Keith Christopher Rowley in his capacity as head of the National Security Council, whether it is criminal failure to make timely appointments in the TTPS, whether it is Rowley's total inability to develop specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely, smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely plans for crime-fighting efforts. Dr. Rowley bears full responsibility for our crime crisis. The buck stops with him, and he has to take responsibility for the situation we live in Trinidad and Tobago. And he, Dr. Rowley, presides over an administration accused by the US government of having senior government officials known since 2020 to be involved in human trafficking. 2 years! The US government tells our government that senior government officials, who are these government officials? Are they sitting in cabinet? Are they contract officers with the state? The government needs to come clear on these matters.
We're still tier 2.
And we're still tier 2 in the human trafficking report. And as usual, as far as we know, he has done not one bloody thing about it. And while Keith Christopher Rowley must accept blame for the fact that we are heading for 600 murders in 2022, the ultimate responsibility for this predicament lies with voters who continue to elect him knowing full well of his full-blown incompetence. Maybe we deserve it. Sitting on 11 billion in surplus revenues, we continue to exist in dire poverty. Our roads are dilapidated and filled with potholes and landslide slips. We have to wait months and years for simple medical procedures. We literally die before public servants get their due pensions. Our schools are war zones with both pupils ducking from bullets and bullies. Guyana students now beat our children hands down in regional examinations. We under Kamla Prasad Bisesa, Trinidad and Tobago, first place in CXC examinations. Now it is Guyana. They have no shame. Fishermen ply their trade, breaks in from pirates, and we live daily wondering whether we'll be the next murder statistic. And while wading in floods, our taps are dry. While St. Lucia and Jamaica break records for tourist arrivals, governments of powerful countries tell their citizens avoid us like the plague. And Rowley understands us well. Starve us for 4 years. Close down Petrotrin. Reduce us to dependency on handouts and hampers. Jail as many of our poor black youth unable to afford bail. Jail as many of them as possible with draconian laws like the Bail Amendment Bill. And then miraculously, 1 year before general elections, the 11 billion will suddenly, magically appear. 1 year. Wage negotiations will be concluded. Roads will be paved. Land slips fixed. P&M MPs will become accessible, more accessible. CPEP jobs will exist in abundance. And another Emailgate fiasco concocted, or some UNC MP arrested. And we will fall for Rowley's BS, as he knows we will do. And once elected, the goodies will disappear. And we will be back to square one, catching our nenen and begging for pittance. That is the wickedness of the PNM, especially under Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. And we will be wondering, like the lamentation in Matthew 27, verse 46, my God, why hast thou forsaken us? And as the mighty sparrow warns us prophetically in Calypso, we like it so. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I thank you.
I would like to thank MP Rodney Charles. As I indicated in my introduction of him, he is somebody who is championing accountability in the parliament. He is somebody who is holding the government accountable for their mishandling, for their incompetence, for their failures in protecting our citizens. And that is something that the United National Congress, government in waiting, we are deeply concerned over the fact that we are already at a record high and on the horizon of 600 murders. That gives us no pleasure whatsoever of having to say that. In fact, it gives us a certain amount of fear, a certain amount of disquiet, a certain amount of despair as to how it is we are going to rally between now and the end of the year with a Christmas season where we are supposed to lighten up a little bit and enjoy ourselves with our family members and friends and relatives. I don't know that we can enjoy that given the rate of this PNM government, this Rowley-led government. So MP Charles, thank you very much for your contribution. I would like to ask if any members of the media have submitted any questions. We can address these questions now.
We have some questions coming in, MP. The first one is directed to you with regards to your comments on the Police Service Commission. Yesterday, the Prime Minister accused you of not telling the truth and of distorting his words about his involvement with the Police Service Commission merit list. In March of this year, he expressed in an interview with the Prime Minister, I believe it was Rayty, and she asked him if he was the high-ranking official who met with the then chairman, Bliss Prasad. The Prime Minister responded, quote, but I told you all that. If you want to call my name, because I'm the only person in the cabinet who goes to see the president. Why do you think the Prime Minister is insisting that he did not intercept the merit list, but also saying he did in fact meet with Bliss Prasad at President's office?
Well, this is when, to describe Prime Minister Rowley himself, he has often used the same phrase. I want to use it with respect to him now. That is what you call playing smart with foolishness. Prime Minister Rowley and that is why I took the time this morning to go through the factual matrix. I was a little bit long-winded, but I wanted to show a timeline of events, the public commentary, our members of the citizenry, those who hold high offices, those who hold high positions, those who contribute as editors, columnists, everybody was asking to unmask who this person was. Prime Minister Rowley did not say it was him. In fact, he ignored it. He said that people were making mischief, that this Police Service Commission don't make mischief with it. And then all of a sudden you realize in March, he buckled under public pressure. And when people were calling for accountability from the president, remember there was questions being posed by Mrs. Prasad Bisesa to the president of the Republic herself, that you need to come clean as to what took place, what is the knowledge that you have. So all of these things started to add up and he could no longer hide. He was running, but he could no longer hide. What Prime Minister Rowley did was that because he has landed himself in another situation where he has been running, but he cannot hide, namely the pathetic performance of his government's law enforcement, his National Security Council, that incompetence that they are displaying. It is clear as daylight for everybody to see. When this is hitting them frontally now, and the commentaries against them, look what has happened, the backlash. I mean, it is just ridiculous to think that you can now have the acting top cop go on vacation. So the backlash of all of that, trying to deflect that situation, he held on to some words in satire, cast in sarcasm, to say, I never said that, Rambally is spreading misinformation, and attempting to feign a defense. That look, whatever we said in relation to him concerning the Police Service Commission, that is not so. We're spreading misinformation. But he himself admitted it. And why is he doing that? Because the situation we are in, having to run like last week Friday and the Friday before that to bring acting appointments, Hollywood meeting Bollywood, acting for actors. So you have an acting position, acting for a next acting position. That nonsense continuing whilst crime continue to go up. That is what he is running from, but he can't hide from it. And the author of that is Prime Minister Rowley, because his actions, as I said before, led to the collapse of the Police Service Commission and the fact that we are, devoid of a substantive commission of police. These things really irk me, and I would like to think that I am reasonably minded and have a little level of sensibility. Unlike Prime Minister Rowley, I think sensible people in this country are crying out, and all he's doing is ducking and running and bobbing and weaving. So I think that is what it was, a red herring again in the making, attempting to distract people from his total failure in dealing with crime and trying to hide that he himself is the author of this desperate state of affairs we have landed ourselves in. So,
Mr. Roberts, can you tell us what was the reason for your march yesterday? And did you receive any written correspondence with the police explaining why the march was denied?
Right, so the reason for the march is that, as I said earlier on, we are in a situation where crime is out of control. We are in a situation where people cannot provide food on the tables. We are in a position where we have witnessed the blatant disrespect for law and order by this administration. And we have also seen throughout the length and breadth of this country that there is so much interference and breaches of our democratic right. And I am an individual who would not take lightly any breach of our democracy and our democratic right. Added to that, we have not received to date no explanation from the police in respect to permission being denied, absolutely no documentation.
You mentioned that you have another march on January 18th next year. Is it your intention to go ahead with this march, even if you may not get permission?
Well, there is the Constitution make it clear that I have freedom of expression, I also have freedom of movement. You will find that down in section 4 of the Constitution. And as a result of that, I intend to uphold my constitutional right on the 13th of December, which is Black Friday, the 13th of January, which is Black Friday, and do what the Constitution permits me to do.
Mr. Taklalsingh, you said that you intend to sue the state on behalf of Mr. Roberts. Is it that your belief that there's political interference in granting or denying permission for this march?
Absolutely. I think the way that this application was dealt with, I think the unlawful delay in dealing with it, I think the failure to provide reasons, I think the fact that they gave the decision at the very last minute, orally, again, without reasons, when the law says that if you are to deny, you are supposed to deny in writing with reasons. The absence of those things, in my view, shows an irregular procedure, and the only inference I can draw from that at this point is that there was political interference to prevent Mr. Roberts from expressing dissent against this government. And I think we have the correspondence here. It's clear. We wrote on the 25th of November, acknowledged, no response. The 2nd of December, acknowledged, no response. The 7th of December, acknowledged, no response. 9th of December, acknowledged, the day we said, give us our permission by 2 p.m. Give us our permission. We need to get it in order to make arrangements. Acknowledged, no decision. And then at 5:45, a functionary of the police service calls Victor Roberts to say, permission denied. If you want to know why, contact the Commissioner of Police, right? That is how you treat people's constitutional rights, but we will not stand for that. We will sue, as I said, the state to strike down or to modify this law, because the court has the power not only to strike down legislation, it can read down legislation. So it may be parts of the legislation would have to be struck down, whereby citizens must get some permit from their oppressors to march against their oppressors. That could never be right. We will also sue the police service, the Commissioner of Police, the Office of the Commissioner of Police, whoever, whether it be Bollywood, Hollywood, or any other wood that we need to sue, we will sue them. And we will also sue the individual police officers who interfered in this process.
Do you think that the appointment of a new acting police commissioner may change the outlook of this march? Perhaps she might be.
Well, you know, I taking up from MP Charles and his vast knowledge of scripture, there's also a part of the scripture which says we should walk by faith and not by sight. So we will have faith in whichever commissioner is appointed, whoever is appointed to act, in the hope that that person will do the right thing and follow the Constitution and follow the law and grant permission. But we, again taking from his example, we have to help ourselves, and if helping ourselves means that we have to go to court to vindicate our rights, then so be it.
MP Charles, there's been a lot of questions regarding the unusual finding of Mr. Jacobs' leave. Do you feel that perhaps he was forced to take leave at this time?
Well, we have to ask the question. And this is the problem with governance in Trinidad that way. There's no certainty. There are no policies so you could anticipate. But it does seem strange that that last week we were discussing the acting appointments of 2 DCPs, and the government seemed oblivious to the fact that Commissioner of Police, Acting Commissioner Jacob, was going on vacations. They could have brought both matters one time and not detain us and waste our time in Parliament. The fact that they did not do so suggests to me that either they sent him on leave or he voluntarily decided he did not want the stain of 600 murders on his career. So he took vacation and he left poor Miss Harewood Christopher to take the bombs. Whatever it is, it speaks to obfuscation, it speaks to lack of transparency, and the time has come for a country aspiring to first world status, that everyone would know. In the United States, for example, or Canada, Singapore, if somebody's going on leave, he has to give notice before, unless it's an emergency. So we have to presume you don't know all the facts. So you give notice so that the person to whom you're handing over would be able to get a seamlessly transition into the acting position. But this is Trinidad. So they leave us to wonder, to guess, and in those circumstances, your guess is as good as mine. But I personally believe that he was sent on leave.
Maybe just a few weeks ago, Mr. Jacobs raised concerns that the scanners and port were not working. In fact, none of the scanners are working. And he suggested that high-powered rifles, as well as drugs and other illegal substances, are flowing into the country. That was extremely embarrassing to members of the government. And now we see Mr. Jacobs going on leave. Do you think that perhaps there's a connection there?
Well, again, we could draw that conclusion. It may be right, it may not. But I think they expected. The Prime Minister has said that when he appointed the fourth person. He didn't say so, sorry. But it's generally believed that he wants to appoint someone who is supportive of his misgovernance, malgovernance. So that the fact that Commissioner of Police will point out the question of scanners and would suggest to us that he either misspoke in their view, or he embarrassed them, and therefore it is possible that he went on leave for that. But what strikes me is that when the acting commissioner of police raised that weeks ago, why didn't the government not take emergency action? That is critical to guns coming in Trinidad and Tobago. We all dying. That requires emergency action by the National Security Council. And the fact that the Prime Minister could come in Parliament, when I asked him on Prime Minister's question, and tell us that there's some procurement, something I think he said would happen in January or February next year, that speaks to laziness, slothfulness, and incompetence. And the time has come for Dr. Rowley to either put up or get out of the job and let somebody do the job that could perform the duties and ensure that we are safe.
Every chance you mentioned the vessels that stopped with faith that are not being used. Yes, on Friday in Parliament, the Minister of National Security suggested that by devolving that information, the opposition was giving away security secrets.
Well, that's nonsense, and I think that was dealt with in the editorial of today's Express, where they wrongly, it is equally surprising was the casual manner in which Dr. Rowley treated the fiasco. That is a question of scanners. The illegally, I think the Express indicated that Dr. Rowley was treating that issue flippantly. It's a serious matter. That everyone knows that the boats are tied up. As I said, Senator Roberts and Senator Leiter done a video showing the boats tied up. They do not wait on the parliamentary channel to inform them that the boats are not functional. And that also speaks to the fact that the government must stop making excuses. They are responsible for manning or coastal waters. They are responsible for stopping guns from coming in through ports of entry. And if they cannot do that, then that is the core problem. The problem is not who knows and who does not know, or whether they knew from the parliamentary channel. Everyone, most people in Trinidad know it anyway.
There are some sources in the Coast Guard that say that the reason these vessels are not being used is because
we do not know. Years ago, we were told that the Coast Guard officers were not being fed. They were eating chana and whatnot. And I raised it in Parliament, and in fact, it was correct. And they corrected it subsequently. But it seems to me that good governance, something is wrong in the leadership of the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard. Something is wrong. We cannot put our finger in it because we do not have access to the information. Are they being trained to operate the vessels? We heard that there are propeller issues. How could a new vessel have propeller problems? We learned about the Coast Guard with the divers, and it's still the Commission of Inquiry is still ongoing. But the little that we have heard leads us to believe that there are issues with respect to the Coast Guard's involvement in that matter. We're told about fishermen who ask for assistance and it does not come on time. And therefore I think the Minister of National Security and the Prime Minister need to have a hands-on control in terms of the management of the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard. And I'm not blaming the officers. It may very well be that the leadership and direction, the policies that emanate from the state are found wanting and not up to the task of providing for our safe and secure ports.
MP Rambally, last week you made some statements regarding MP David Lee. You suggested that, you asked a question that government should state whether or not certain police officers were paid unusual amounts of money. I just want to know, have you provide any evidence for that?
Well, there are certain steps, let me put it this way, there are certain steps that have been embarked upon based on the information that we have received to acquire such information. But that information still falls within the bosom of those who are in charge. And so that is why I asked the question, will they frontally answer whether or not officers who would have been involved in the investigation and subsequent prosecution of Dr. David Lee, Member of Parliament for Point-a-Pierre, whether they will state categorically that none of those officers were financially remunerated for matters which could have been dealt with in due course, but they were conveniently dealt with at that point in time, in the prelude to charging Dr. David Lee. And that is something that we have asked. So we would like to get a response on that, and a very frank response. We have already embarked on a course of action to solicit the information in a codified manner. We have information at this time, but we are seeking it in a codified manner. But that is not to say that we will shirk from our responsibility and our duty to put it frontally, and we want those questions answered. Because you see, we are seeing it against a backdrop of conduct on the part of this Rowley-led government of political persecution. That is what we are seeing it against that backdrop. You are hearing about people's rights and not being, coming to fruition. They are unable to express themselves and to enjoy their fundamental liberties. And against this backdrop of conduct, we have to ask these questions. So yes, I repeat that, and yes, we are taking steps at this point in time to get codified documentation.
May I? Are you finished with it? May I just point out that I found the Express editorial today's, which spoke about the question of the MP divulging information on the marine assets. And I'll just read a part. Instead of bolting the back door, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley is worrying about about criminals discovering that it is open. While this logic may occasionally apply in the case of a private home, possibly located in a quiet rural community, it definitely does not apply to the national security, and certainly not to well-connected and sophisticated transnational criminal networks that traffic in illegal arms, drugs, and human beings. We can assure Dr. Rowley that these networks are not relying on the Prime Minister's question time to find out about the current status of the Coast Guard's prime patrol vessels. End of quote.
MP Charles, you mentioned Paria. Today, there's a story out today detailing some of the financial troubles that Paria Fuel is currently involved in. I don't know if you or MP Charles or MP Rambally would get a comment on that.
With MP Charles, subject to MP Charles also wanting to contribute, I want to make it clear that what we saw today is this is a troubling headline for the country. The troubling headline is financial trouble for Paria, and that is what it says here. And you see a picture of Newman George. It says difficulties detailed in chairman's letter to finance minister requesting intervention, and this is by one Anna Ramdas, page 3 of today's Express. State-owned Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited was in trouble in July cash-strapped, unable to pay for fuel imports or its taxes on time, and it goes on. It gives a whole, alignment of difficulties that Paria is going through now. And here it is, we are seeing it today, page 3, 11th of December. Now I want to say that this is the crown jewel,
The flagship.
the flagship for this government. And this is an achievement that they boast about, that all that former governments couldn't deal with, and they couldn't handle the pressures in Petrotrin. We were able to take Petrotrin and to restructure it and align it in such a way. And now we have Paria, and well, we know what has happened with Paria, with those divers. But I want to come back to this here. I want to tell people squarely, you know what this article ends with? No response from Young, Minister of Energy. No response from George, the chairman. The Sunday Express sent questions to Young and George yesterday asking whether Paria's financial problems were resolved and whether the finance ministry had intervened. But there was no immediate response. The millions owed to Paria by NPMC and Unipet are not a new issue. 1 year ago, in December 2019, Inbert disclosed that Unipet at that time had owed Paria more than 100 million, and Paria had halted fuel supply, which was later resolved. In the 2021-2022 national budget, delivered later in September, Inbert announced that the fuel subsidy will be capped at 1 billion. The minister had said the fuel price was affected by the market price of oil. There was an immediate increase in the cost of fuel, with the prices of premium and super gasoline increasing by $1 and diesel by 50 cents, something that you all know of already. Unlike no response coming from these gentlemen who are the line persons in charge, under the leadership of Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bissessa, MP Charles and myself have to say our prayers early in the morning, very early, and get to work early, right, and get the job done. Dr. David Lee, who is the shadow Minister of Energy, has already put out a release, and I will just use Dr. David Lee's release. I'm sure it is out there with the media already. This is what he labels it. Paria's financial troubles poses threat of fuel shortage and national crisis. This is what he says. The damning reports that state-owned Paria Fuel Trading Company is cash-strapped and unable to pay for its fuel imports signals a looming national crisis that poses grave catastrophic consequences for every citizen of this nation that has been solely created by this PNM government's reckless destruction of Petrotrin. These revelations, while deeply worrying and potentially crippling for the national economy, come as no surprise, as for years we have warned this government that the absurd actions to shut down our Petrotrin refinery will totally destroy our fuel security. Today we have proof that this government's baseless, illogical, and ludicrous decimation of the refinery has sunk our nation to a new low, embarrassing us regionally as we have regressed from a country that once supplied fuel to the Caribbean to a nation being unable to pay for fuel imports. From the very start, this government was aware of the financial difficulties facing Paria, hence the updated financial statements of the holding company, Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited, TPHL, were delayed in the past years. This government simply wanted to cover up that these new companies were not successful or even on equal par with Petrotrin, as this government even gave Heritage Petroleum Company Limited a blight on paying supplemental petroleum tax for 2 years while energy companies continued to pay the supplemental petroleum tax. However, and it goes on, the Minister of Finance must tell the country why did he fail to ensure the outstanding subsidy owed to Paria by state-owned NP was paid. Is it that Minister Imbert suppressed these payments and jeopardized Paria's ability to import fuel, all in an effort to say he had a surplus for the last financial year? It is truly astounding that when questioned the Prime Minister about the restart of the refinery, and this was just last Friday, at last Friday's parliamentary sitting, he had zero care, zero concern, or zero plans for the restart of the Petrotrin refinery, and worse, lacked remorse for his government's decision, which today has placed every home, every business, and every citizen in jeopardy. The Prime Minister labeled going back into refining as UNC madhouse business. And he was just like, rallying, talking incoherently, saying that this thing about Petrotrin was UNC madhouse business. Dr. David Lee says, but the real madhouse business is a government who have robbed this nation of forex, jobs, and fuel security by leaving the refinery to become scrap metal. The very fact that Paria has a monopoly control for the import of fuel into our national market, yet has run into financial difficulty, is hardcore evidence of this government's total inability not only to manage our national energy affairs, but their absolute inability to protect the core fabric of our nation. This, of course, is Dr. David Lee, Member of Parliament for Pointe-à-Pierre, Shadow Minister of Energy. I did not intend to read out the whole thing, but his release is so comprehensive, it is so persuasive, it just wants me to read more and more, Dr. Lee. So that's why I ended up reading the whole thing.
Lastly, does anyone, well, right now the Prime Minister is holding a national day of prayer and diplomatic center. I was wondering if you could comment on your thoughts on that.
Let me ask Mr. Victor Roberts.
Well, first of all, the Prime Minister holding a National Day of Prayer. I think the Prime Minister firstly need to pray for himself. And I am speaking in relation to being sane. Because from where I sit, as I said earlier on, the Prime Minister of this country has that responsibility to ensure, as MP Charles and MP Dinesh and even Attorney at Law Kiel speak of, the Prime Minister have a responsibility to understand that the first thing, if you want to have any intercession with God, is that you must have a clean heart and you must be able to tell the truth. That's the first thing. You must be able to tell the truth. And what we have seen over the years with the Prime Minister speaking blatant untruth nationally, across the board, I think that he really needs some prayers. I really believe that he needs some prayers.
The Constitution affirms right to religious belief and right to have your religion. It also affirms our belief as a nation in God. So nothing is wrong with prayer and a day of prayer. But I think in this circumstance and in this context, it is a clear admission by the Prime Minister that he is unable to deal with the problems of our country, and now he has resorted to simply praying about it. What you need is a nation of leaders, of strong men and women who will effect the correct policies to solve the problems of our country and to uphold the rule of law and to bring back democracy in this country. So in that vein, I would say pray for our democracy, pray for our constitutional rights, pray for our institutions, and pray that we can restore democracy to Trinidad and Tobago.
I think it's Dr. Rowley's right to have a day of prayer. Our Constitution is founded on principles which acknowledge the supremacy of God in whatever form. But I would hope that Dr. Rowley listens to what a citizen of Trinidad sent to me, and I will just read what the citizen said. I hope Dr. Rowley asks for forgiveness for the 9-year-old Jamal Modest gunned down whilst playing. He should ask for forgiveness in the day of prayer for the 4 divers who your Paria, and I'm quoting, Paria posse left in a pipe below the sea, and from what we have learned so far, did not lift a finger to help. And the assumption by the person who sent this that it was death by Paria's negligence, in part. The person told me to tell Dr. Rowley to ask for forgiveness for illegally closing down Petrotrin, point you raised, for not helping the thousands of lives destroyed by floods, and for Rose Hill children hiding from gunshots. And it ends by saying, Rowley, beg for forgiveness.
I want to, of course, adopt and endorse. I don't consider myself, that, much spiritual.
Neither.
But I listening to these gentlemen, so I want to adopt what they have said. What I want to say, and I don't make light of anyone's prayers. If Dr. Rowley, in his view, is holding prayers and people want to join with him, I of course wish them all the best in their spiritual endeavors. What I want to ask though is that in terms of prayers, whilst not disrespecting anybody's worship, is it an admittance on the part of the government that they are really clueless, they don't know how to run the country, and so they're really praying for some divine intervention to give them a clue, to give them some clairvoyance? Is that what we are seeing here? And I make no light, I don't make light of what they are doing spiritually. But I will end with this. It is said that, you have these 10 commandments, right, MP Charles? And the 9th commandment, I know Victor Roberts is very versed in this as well. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Is that commandment 9? And I want to tell Dr. Rowley, what it means is that you shall not tell a lie. Do not tell stories that are untrue about people. When you tell a lie, you hurt yourself as well as others. And that is something you should always bear in mind as a leader of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Soon, people will not trust what you say. And that is according to our scriptures. And I think that is exactly what is translating now in our country. I think that, do we have any other questions?
No, that's all.
So I want to quickly thank Mr. Victor Roberts, Mr. Kiel Taklalsingh, MP Rodney Charles. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. We did not intend to be very lengthy today, but there are a lot of issues that we had to deal with. Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bisesa, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Leader of the Government in Waiting, all of my parliamentary colleagues, we would like to thank all of you for tuning in, members of the media, citizenry at large. Of course, we will continue to hold these press conferences, as you would have seen, exemplified by Dr. David Lee's own work ethic. When you can't get members of the government to talk and to respond, they have had probably at least 48 hours or at least 24 hours notice to respond to these critical issues. Paria having financial trouble, and they don't respond. You'll see Dr. David Lee has responded in a matter of just mere hours, already putting out his release. This is the kind of work ethic. It shows that the United National Congress under Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bisesa and all my parliamentary colleagues, that we are ready, we are a government in waiting, and we intend to perform and fulfill our duties to the best of our abilities in the best interest of the people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. I want to say thank you very much, and we end this press conference. Thank you.